it's competition, it's capitalism. It isn't come by let's improve marketing because it's a not-for-profit discipline. Fuck that.
Hej kära lyssnare, välkommen till avsnitt 53 av denna podd där vi idag med oss en av världens främsta marknadsförare som heter Ritson som sitter i Australien. Så först lite kort info till engelska lyssnare. Dear international listeners, welcome to this podcast. I will have some introduction now in Swedish, so fast forward 2-3 minutes and you will come to my conversation with Mark. Till dig som är gammal eller ny lyssnare så har vi alltså kommit till VD-podden där jag, Araskilan, grundare och VD för marknadsföringsbyrån Viva Media, samtalar med det skarpaste hjärnor jag kan komma på för att utveckla mitt ledarskap och kunskaper i bolagsbygge. Syftet är helt enkelt att utforska hur man bygger världens bästa organisation. Här finns det en palett av kunskap som man behöver ta in, men mycket kokar ändå ner till ledarskapet. Idag har jag förmånen att ha med mig en riktig guru inom marknadsföring. Men innan vi hoppar in i samtalet så har jag bjudit in Alexander hos oss som ska förklara termen share of search som vi även pratar om i podden. Hej Alexander och välkommen till VD-podden.
Tackar.
Berätta, vad gör du på Viva Media?
Jag är varumärkeskonsult på Viva Media. Så jag jobbar med marknadsföring och varumärken.
Ja, det är ganska koncist att du hjälper företag med sitt varumärke helt enkelt, eller?
Ja, exakt.
Men du, jag pratar med Mark om något som heter share of search idag. Och jag vet att du är väldigt kunnig om det här och vill fråga dig, vad är det egentligen?
Alltså jag är så kunnig jag kan vara. Det är ganska nytt mätetal än så länge. Men det är som sagt ett mätetal som använder sig av sökdata från sökmotorerna för att indikera en marknadsandel för ett företag.
Kan liksom hur stor man än är få reda på det? Eller spelar det någon roll? Behöver man någon typ av liksom storlek på sitt bolag?
Alltså egentligen inte, eftersom man jämför inom kategorin med de varumärkena man konkurrerar med. Men det viktiga är ju egentligen att få med sig bland de största varumärkena för att kunna få något form av vettigt mättal att luta sig mot. Så
om jag förstår rätt så är det lite att bruset i sökmedier så kan man se hur man ligger till mot typ konkurrenter eller liksom.
Ja, men typ så, exakt.
Ja.
Precis.
Hur kan man få reda på detta? Hur kan man få ta del av sin share of search?
Ja, alltså the long way to do it så att säga, det är att man går in på Google Trends och så går man in där och så trycker man in sitt eget varumärke och så trycker man in de andra varumärkena man vill bencha mot då. Och då sen väljer man att man tar så mycket data man bara får, alltså så lång tid tillbaka som möjligt, och så laddar man ner den som en CSV-fil. Sen blir det ju då lite så här Excel-dribbel som jag kallar det då. Och det är att då när man går in i Excel där så behöver man liksom få ner den här datan och sätta den på ett rullande medeltal på 12 månader för att jämna ut linjerna när du väljer diagram av det här. För annars kan det bli väldigt konstiga linjer liksom. Grejen här är ju att den här Excel-grejen och ladda ner från Google Trends, det är ju gratis så att säga då, men det är oerhört tidskrävande. Jag till exempel då, som är konsult, så är det som så här, man konsult så är det tid pengar, och då använder jag en mjukvara för det här, där jag också använder mig av sentimentdata eller känslodata för att få ännu bättre sökningar egentligen och ännu bättre data ut.
Okej, så det finns lite smidigare sätt i alla fall.
Det gör det, absolut.
Ja, men om det är så att man är intresserad av det här, då kan man väl höra av sig till dig?
Absolut. Ja. Det är bara ringa, mejla. Du hittar mig på LinkedIn också. Det finns en del artiklar på LinkedIn som jag har skrivit om det också. Man vill läsa in sig lite på det.
Så om ni får lite inspiration efter det här samtalet, hör av er till oss, hör av er till Alex och läs mer och få kontaktuppgifterna då på vivamedia.se. Dags för samtalet med Mark. Jag får varna för en icke-akademisk språk med många svårdomar från Mark, men det blir på något härligt sätt lite icke-svenskt som känns lite befriande. Så vi hoppar in i samtalet.
Mark Ritson har en bakgrund som konsult och professor inom marknadsföring på flertalet av de världsledande universiteten. Idag undervisar Mark i hans egenutvecklade och välrenommerade Mini MBA. Sedan starten 2016 har 12 000 marknadsförare världen över gått utbildningen. Mark skriver också en uppskattad kolumn i Marketing Week där han löpande kommunicerar diverse banbrytande marknadsföringsteorier för sin tid.
And we're on, and welcome, Mark.
Hej, Harash, hur mår du?
Oh, you're Swedish.
Jag pratar mycket bra svensk. Jag har haft en liten. Jag har haft sabbatikalen i Handelshögskolan i 2002.
Så du kan lite svenska i alla fall.
Ja, lite svenska. Också jag har en sambo från Göteborg.
Det är sant.
But yeah, we should stay in English for the.
We stay in English. So you obviously been in Sweden then?
Yeah, no, I had a very good 6-7 months living in Stockholm, a long time ago, 20 years ago, and I love Sweden. I've got good friends who live mostly in Göteborg, and I used to visit a lot. I really love the culture. I had a couple of very good friends, a girlfriend, and I spent a lot of good times at Stockholm School of Economics. Really good people.
What is, for you, Sweden associated with?
Look, I'd say it's probably, for me, it's a couple of things. I guess it's the cleanliness of the place. And I mean on the broadest level. The cities are clean, the country is clean, the air is clean, the people are clean, they're straight and they seem pretty honest. I accept that underneath that there is a little, lagom and everything. There's a little more unfairness than first meets the eye. But still, I think it's a pretty decent society with it's pretty aspirational, I think, as it goes. So I really like that part of it. I like a culture that likes a beer and a sausage and soccer. And that's easy for me to identify with. And I haven't met a bad Swede, and I've met a lot. You know what I mean? They're like the Dutch, in the sense that they have a point of view. But if you go out on a night out on the avenue in Göteborg or, in Stockholm, in Soda, you're never going to meet a bad character. You know what I mean? It's a very well balanced place. So yeah, I really have a lot of time for the Swedes. I found it incredibly bureaucratic, and there was a time where I was going to move there, or try and move there, because I thought, where do I love living? When I want to get out of London, and I thought, well, Sweden's at the top of my list. But the bureaucracy, especially in academia, when I was a professor, was too much to bear. I couldn't handle it. But yeah, no, a lot of love for Sverige.
It's the Swedish word lagom, Have you heard it?
Yeah, lagom I know well. Yeah. But it doesn't apply to foreigners, so I found that fascinating, right? Lagom it's only for you natives. For us foreigners, we're allowed to go as tall and as high as we want. They just don't like it among the Swedes, which I find fascinating,
So where are you right now, Mark?
So I have a small house in a place called Battery Point, which is a very old part of Hobart, the capital city of Tasmania. And we have a much bigger, nicer house way out in the middle of nowhere in Tasmania, which is really nowhere, where I mostly live. But at weekends, we come in here to try and be with the population and do things like go to the movies, show my daughter, civilization. And so this room I'm in now is my tiny little studio where I do things like this. And studio is a fancy word for it. It's basically sound tiles and a green screen on the back of a garage. But it works pretty well. I have a much bigger studio at home in the country house. I use this for online teaching when I'm here. So it's a broom cupboard, but it works pretty well. I can make this green screen turn into things later on if you want. So it works pretty well.
These days, what is the normal day for you, would you say?
Well, it's 100% Mini MBA. So my life originally was, I guess, as a professor, as a junior professor, was all academic for many years. And gradually, I kept being a professor, but I did more and more consulting and more applied work. And then it got to the point where essentially the being a professor thing was really part-time. And I was an adjunct, and most of my life was consulting with companies. And then in the last 5 years, I created this online course called the Mini MBA in marketing, and later the Mini MBA in brand management, as a way of teaching people online in a better way than most horrible online teaching. And it's taken off. It's a very large, we do about, this year we'll probably do around 7,000 marketers all over the world from 40 plus countries. And I'll train them over about a 12-week period. And it isn't the usual shit online training. It's quite in-depth. I spent most of today doing online Q&A sessions, and I'm very passionate about it. It makes a shit ton of money. We train a lot of people, a lot of senior people now, and the big surprise is it's been more effective than teaching in a classroom. So I always knew when I launched it could be more convenient and more profitable. But there's no doubt, in my experience, that teaching like this is much more effective than going to Stockholm School of Economics or London Business School. People learn better if you do it properly. So we're growing at a great rate. And alas, I don't have time for consulting anymore. I don't have time to be a real professor anymore. I am full-time running the Mini MBA. We have a team of about 8 in London that help me, but I do all the teaching, and it's been a great pleasure.
So you're 18 people now. Wow.
Eight.
So
yeah, 18 would cross the magic line, Arash. I've got a lot of friends who own agencies, and 15 is as big a business as you ever want to be, is what I've learned.
That's true. Them. There's something in that. We're a bit over. Yeah, we're a bit over 80 now. So it's.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're fucked. You're totally fucked. Arash. You're fucked. You've got to work out a way of not growing beyond 15 and I don't know why, but I've heard that from so many smart people. It's not fun after 15 unless you want to be a megalomaniac. So we're at 8. I can't imagine we will stay at 8 for long. We're a very big business, but I don't want it to be more than 10 or 12. You know what I mean? Then we're going to stop,
But I'm curious about that transition from being professor, consulting, and you can say that you're an entrepreneur now, could you?
Yeah. I think so.
How do you find that?
I'm not so sure about entrepreneur, right? And I'll tell you why in a minute. It's really very interesting, though, because if I'd have fucked it up, like creating the Mini MBA brand and business, I would have looked like a pretty big buffoon. Do you know what I mean? Like if I'd have got the branding wrong and the marketing wrong.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying it's perfect, right? But at least we're a very profitable business and blah, blah, blah. So that's a relief. Entrepreneur is a bit of a big word for me. I never did. I'm in absolute awe of real entrepreneurs. And, the French definition is you basically risk more than you have, in a nutshell, right? You put more on the line than you can afford to lose is the real word, the real definition of entrepreneur. And I
like
never
that
did.
one. That's a good one.
I mean, that's really what it is, right? It means that you are essentially betting on yourself with more money than you actually have, right? And I definitely didn't do that. I did it in such a way that I would have lost a year's worth of income and looked like a fool, but I wouldn't have bankrupted myself. And, I can't do that. I'm not a proper entrepreneur. I can't put all the chips in, bet on myself and refuse to, I'm not made from that stuff. I admire people who are, but that's not me. And I don't like this shit about, you have to, fail sometimes to learn. I think that's bullshit as well. Fuck that. Fuck failing. Yeah, sure, it might happen to all of us. I'm not trying to be arrogant. What I'm saying is, I do all these interviews sometimes, and it comes up very often. What's your biggest failure? I haven't had one. I mean, I haven't been wildly successful all the time, but I haven't had some massive crushing failure that I've learned from. When I taught at MIT, they're obsessed with it, learning by failing. I'm like, fuck that. Let's learn by succeeding. It sounds a lot more enjoyable. Do you know what I mean? I think that's one of the myths of the industry.
It's very conventional, isn't it? That you should risk and you should fail and you should learn.
Fail.
Yeah.
And I get it. If a failure happens, I can see how you learn a lot. I just don't think we should discourage failure. You know what I mean? And they do really encourage it at MIT. And I'm like, no, I'd rather just try and avoid failing if I can. You know what I mean?
I like this. You're challenging my thoughts. It's more like not giving up, isn't it? because failing is it's more like I gave up, but because things happen, and at least when you're running a company, but somewhere to not just give up, to stand firm.
There's that, Arash, but I believe in giving up. I mean, I think one of the great lessons of marketing is sometimes we should kill the product before we launch it, and that's not a failure if we save the company millions of dollars that we would have otherwise have lost. I do a case study with my Mini MBA class where Levi's are launching suits. A very old case study, but basically you can see very early on that it's a total fucking failure, right? It's a dog.
And it's in jeans, isn't it? Or is it?
Yeah, no, it's Levi's jeans making suits, and the marketer in charge of it, who's now very famous for this, can't see the fact that this product just sucks, and everyone else can, and he just can't get it because he's invested so much of his life into it, And we follow him all the way through to absolute disaster, and everybody gets fired at the end, and he still doesn't realize. And the lesson is, marketing isn't sales. Sometimes marketers can make a lot of money for a company by killing the product and saying this is not going to work. Let's rewind back. And I think that's missing from a lot of the growth hacking bullshit that encapsulates marketing at the moment.
I love that. That's a good one. Do you see any modern day things that are just, it's too stupid to...
Oh yeah, I've done it with clients before. I've various different projects where I've said to them very early on. There was an instance with a financial institution where they were obsessed with wearable technology, and they were plowing a lot of money into wearable technology. And I loved the people, and I just kept saying to them, "This is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. You guys have no core competence in this, and what you're making, the thing you're making, is both technologically and fashion-wise an abomination. You know what I mean? You're a bank. Stop, stop trying to make it work. Give up. It's bullshit, And it's interesting. I worked many years ago with McKinsey, and I used to go and we used to train McKinsey consultants all over the place. And I used to hang out with a guy that used to train McKinsey consultants in client leadership, which was a very fascinating topic, is how do you find a balance serving clients and also, trying to save them from themselves. And his line was always, you say to a client, I think this is fucking stupid, but I will come with you on this journey and die on the hill with you. But can I just point out before we go on the hill, it's stupid. And I think that's a service you should give to, the clients that have kept me on board like the fact that I'll tell them something's bullshit and I'm not going to hold back. I think that's super important.
Which work has been the most fun for you to work on? Which brand is it?
Oh, it's funny now, because I used to fight. I spent a long time at LVMH in Paris, and I used to fight the urge to
and
say
it's Louis
LVMH.
Vuitton for the ones that...
Yeah, so LVMH is the world's biggest luxury goods company. They own Louis Vuitton, but they also own 75 other brands, from Dom Perignon to Sephora to Marc Jacobs.
Amazing company. Yeah.
And I worked across all the brands for the CEOs for about 15 years. So I ran all the internal training, and I would work on jobs for the different CEOs. And I spent a long time there and knew a lot of people and really loved it, And I suppose now I used to fight the desire.
Sorry for this one, but did you meet Arnold?
Yeah. A couple of times. It's not something you want to, you want. Not that
because he's one of the few that actually Steve refers to, Steve Jobs, when he was in life.
Yeah. They were in. I've worked on a brand that was working with Steve Jobs. Yeah, I've seen him wandering around. When he was alive, obviously. Arnaud's a brilliant. Mr. Arnaud is a brilliant man. And I think what most people miss about him is, although he is one of the world's richest men, he was far more accessible than a lot of the other guys, because Mr. Arnaud spends his weekends in the shops, always has done. So he goes to, I won't say where, but there are certain stores that he goes to, boutiques, every Saturday and Sunday to watch the clients and talk to his frontline staff. So although he's super, exclusive and all of that, he knows the name of the doorman at all the department stores in Paris, literally, and he's there most of the time. So he's very in the nuts of the business. And we did a session many years ago with creative students from St. Martin's, and Mr. Arnaud and Sidney Toledano, who's the CEO at Dior at the time, they came into the room and we debriefed it with them, and it was, it was really interesting because everyone else was like, oh my God. But the students, were like, they knew who they were, but they're like, yeah, who cares? I'm 22 and I don't care. It's very interesting.
When you read about Steve Jobs, I was thinking about him now. There's a lot of myths. He was a marketing genius. But there was a saying, of course you've heard about it probably, but when he launched AirPod, Arnold congratulated him and Steve said, yeah, thank you, but I know that the AirPod won't be there in 10, 20 years, but people will always want a Louis Vuitton bag or something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mr. Arnaud said it several times. He said, it was when Apple became the most valuable brand in the world, and they asked him about it on French TV, and he said, I think they've done very well and they deserve congratulations. I think in 100 years' time, I'm not sure if people will be using an iPhone, but they will be drinking Dom Perignon and they will be carrying Louis Vuitton luggage. And he wasn't having a go at Apple. What he was trying to say is you've got to respect brands that are 100, 200, 300 years old, because their metabolism now is going to last, probably eternity. And Apple will be around, but it's a stronger brand on any definition than Vuitton. But over the 100-year time series that we have to analyze it, the risk, the net present value, I'd put my money on Vuitton over Apple across 100 years,
So some quick ones. Are you ready for some quick questions then?
Whenever a Swedish man sitting in front of a bed says, are you ready for some quick ones? My response is, yeah. Mycket bra.
Lagom. Let's go for the lagom. Okay. 3 Swedish favorite brands.
Ooh. Well, I worked a lot with Ericsson, so I have to say Ericsson. I always felt that they were kind of shit in a kind of great way. You know what I mean? I think they never quite got it. And I always remember in B2B networks, they were good, but they were getting smashed by Nokia.
Very lagom, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And then they got smashed by Apple in handsets. But they're such a likable bunch of people, successful despite themselves. So we've got to do Ericsson. I do Pripps Blah, the beer. I like that. Pripps was my favorite, I think, at the time. And then I won't go a brand now. I'm going to go a semi-brand. I'm very keen on a Havre Special at a certain time of night. And I don't think that's a brand, right? But it's a form of cuisine, Svenska cuisine, that I'm very around 2 a.m. If you go back 20 years ago on a Saturday night on the Avenue around 3 a.m., you would have found me inevitably eating perhaps 2 Havre Specials, having had a very, very good night. So they're probably my 3.
And what would you say about Spotify today?
I think it's done very well. I think it's impressive in the way that it's played around with advertising formats. And I think that they're probably the most innovative in that sense. That, I think they've always played around with, how do we mix our revenue generating systems. I think that's impressive about them. And they seem to be the one that's going to emerge. Like the Joe Rogan deal, kind of coronates them as the new kings of 21st century audio, which puts them in a very strong place. I think, by the way, they're a perfect example of how artificial intelligence is absolute, at the moment at least, useless. So if you think about Spotify, I use, like you, I'm sure, we use Spotify. I listen to it 4 or 5 hours a day, I would say, while I'm working. Think what Spotify know about me, right? They know what I listen to. They know what I don't listen to. They know what I skip. They know when I listen to it, when I skip it, how long I listen to it for. And they're using the same tracks that, literally a million other people would be listening to. And yet, when I try and generate one of these playlists, of new music for me, it's always shithouse. Like, I'd literally be better off putting the radio on. And I'm just obsessed with Amazon's the same, right? The recommended products from Amazon are either, I once bought a toilet seat on Amazon. I won't go into details, but I bought a toilet seat on Amazon, And then all I got for fucking months were more toilet seats, as if I was like shitting out of every hole in my house. Do you know what I mean? You would think some kind of artificial intelligence would be, the man has bought a toilet seat. It's unlikely he's going to need more toilet seats. Do you know what I mean? So I think all this bullshit about artificial intelligence, go and try this at home, right? Listeners, go to Spotify. You can click on any of your playlists, right click, and it'll say, generate a similar playlist, and then listen to it. It's shit, right? It's total shit. So I think this exemplifies how AI is still predominantly shithouse. I mean, I'm sure at some point they will learn and become masters of our universe, but we're still in a very early stage.
Very, very early. And the most thing that people say are AI it's machine learning. It's not AI. And they try to figure it out.
It's just a computer program, right? If we just replaced AI and machine learning with computer programming, we might get to a bit more of the truth. Yeah.
So, Pepsi or Coke?
You'd go with Coke, but you'd point out that the whole category's fucked, so it really doesn't matter anymore.
BMW or Mercedes?
The Mercedes, purely because of the SLS. I once did a gig in Miami, and this is how spoiled I was. I couldn't fly back to Australia on Friday and get a connection home. So I had to spend Friday night in Miami, and I was genuinely upset about this. And I sort of, for about 10 minutes, I was like, fuck, I have to spend Friday in Miami. And then I thought, what are you talking about? You're in Miami on a Friday night. What do you want to do? And so I did this in less than an hour, which is why America is great. I thought, well, I want to go to the Florida Keys because I have a couple of very good holidays in the Keys many years before. I'm going to fucking go back to the Keys. I thought, well, I need to rent a car. And I thought, I'll rent a cheap sports car. And I rented a Mercedes SLS. Now, to give readers some context of this, so the SLS is a supercar. It's the one with the gull-wing doors, right? One of my dream cars. In Australia, because of our luxury car tax, I'll do it in US dollars. That car new would have cost me about $800,000 Australia, US dollars, right? It's crazy, right? You never even dream of that. But I was able to rent it. I think it was for about $2,000 for 2 days, right? So it was just crazy bargain. So I did what any sane human being would do. I rented the car, and then I drove the fuck out of it. And I don't know if you know about this, but to get to the Florida Keys, you drive over essentially a 3-hour-long bridge, right? That's basically what it is, right? So I just hit it real hard. I mean, really hard. And I normally drive Porsches. Like I like a fast, car. But this was beyond. This is a massive V12 engine. And I hit a couple of these bumps on this bridge, and it genuinely felt as if the thing might take off, and I might not come back down again. I was doing, I don't even want to talk about how fast I was going. There was no one on the road. And you can see a straight, you're looking at 10 miles of straight bridge. There was no one for 5 miles in front or behind. And so I hit it. And I've never been more exhilarated. So yeah, Mercedes all the way. Although Porsche is my first love.
Favorite social media?
LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn. I've always liked it. I'm pretty close to the guys that run it. And I think it's actually useful. I think Twitter increasingly is a toilet. I've never really understood the desire to reveal oneself on Facebook and all of that. Putting your kids on Facebook is possibly the most ridiculously stupid thing you could ever do. And then Instagram, too old really to appreciate it properly. So definitely LinkedIn.
Best brand right now?
Best brand right now. Now I'll have to have a qualifying question. When I teach brand management, I make it very clear. There's brand equity, which is kind of the natural clay of the brand, and there's brand management, the way that it's being run. Which do you want? Because they're not the same thing.
Best on executing it, I would say.
Yeah, so I'd probably go KFC globally. I really am quite a fan of that team and how they've, everyone writes about Burger King, and it's quite a well-run brand with good ads. I think KFC is a brilliantly run brand and is doing really well. So I'm really impressed with how KFC are playing it. I think they're doing exceptionally well.
Is there something special there that you see?
No, there's nothing in particular. I think there's real market orientation. I think there's a real focus on evolving the menu, but staying true to the heritage of the brand. I think there's good use of data. I don't think they're obsessed with advertising anymore. They are pricing, product development, distribution modeling. I think they embrace online, but they don't fall in love with digital. So I think they're good at everything, which is normally the way to be successful, I think.
I've followed your work for years now. And to be honest, in my early years as agency director or founder, it was Gary Vee for me. I bought his books. I read everything.
It was your teenage crush, Arash.
It truly was. But I don't know how to say this, but the more mature I've become, the more I really learned about marketing, the more the agency has developed. It's more switching on to Mark.
Yeah, you're growing up now. You're appreciating a more mature, well-rounded man. Yeah, that makes sense. No, look, let's be honest about Gary Vee. He's a decent, nothing personal in it. Gary Vee is, first of all, I don't know the guy. He seems very, very accessible. He's a huge success story. He deserves lots of credit, and he seems a very nice fellow. First of all, so nothing. And
I want to say that too. It's nothing about him as a person, but it's more about the teaching or the understanding of marketing.
Let's put that to one side. Nice chap, but my dad's a nice chap. I wouldn't follow him on marketing, though. Do you know what I mean? But the nonsense coming out of Gary Vee, he's a nonsense machine. When it comes to marketing, I can't comment on the life coaching shit. I know nothing about that. That looks like nonsense too, but I have no idea. I can tell you on the marketing front, it's total piss. Total and utter piss.
What is it that is piss, would you say?
I'd say his ridiculous focus on tactics, his complete lack of knowledge of actual marketing fundamentals, his disrespect for education and training in marketing, his utter lack of knowledge about strategy and market orientation. He's done an absolutely spectacular amount of damage to the field of marketing over the last decade by taking I use Gary Vee it's good you said it like that, Arash, in the sense that when you were younger and more naive, you thought he was I take Gary Vee as a very clear idiot magnet. Anyone attracted to Gary Vee doesn't really get it. And in that sense, he's phenomenally useful. In the US, we talk a lot about different CMOs. And one of the tests of a lot of CMOs are useless, right? Even of big brands. And one of the ways to find out is are they a disciple of Gary Vee? And if they are, you can be certain that they're completely useless, right? Because Gary Vee talks nonsense, utter nonsense.
And when you say that, I'm interested. CMOs that are not getting it, what is it that they don't really get?
Oh, no, I'm not saying they don't get it. I'm saying they're not very good. So
but what is it that they don't understand about marketing that is so important to know, would you say?
Well, I'd start out with the fact that I've called it tactification for many years. There's a whole generation of CMOs that are very good at positioning themselves in the industry, by talking about brand purpose, by producing slick advertising, by talking the talk of digital hoo-ha, but who fundamentally don't know how to build a strategy for their brands or companies, aren't able to interact with the other C members of the organization because they're just not at the same level of horsepower, experience, or ability, and who essentially are pretty much a joke within the organizations that they work in. Now, that's very strong, and that isn't always the case. But for every great CMO that truly is a master of her or his craft, there's at least one more that knows they don't know that much about marketing, and deep down, they're an advertising person masquerading as a marketer. I think the focus on tactics at the expense of strategy and diagnosis is probably the biggest sin.
What would you say is the state of marketing today? Are we in a good place, or
No, we've definitely gone back. I mean, it sounds fogeyism, and there's some good data on this as well. I would say the state of marketing is worse than it was 15 to 20 years ago. Knowledge of the discipline is worse. I don't actually think that's a bad thing, though. I mean, a lot of people go, I'm worried about the state of marketing, and it's bad, and it's like, fuck. It's fantastic. I mean, marketing isn't, some kind of team sport. You know what I mean? I don't care the state of the industry. All I care about is the companies and marketers that I work with have it easier now because the standard is lower and they're working for your competition. I genuinely think if you read properly and you understand marketing and you get strategy and you execute properly and you understand it, it's even easier to be successful now. I was talking to my brand management students about this today. The constant questions I get is, but why is it so bad in the companies that we all work for? And I'm like, because brand management is badly practiced. Don't complain about it. This is your opportunity. I fundamentally believe I run the most advanced applied brand management training in the world. I'm pretty sure I do. And that means that once I get through the 15 weeks with my brand manager marketers, they're brilliantly trained and they're going to kill. And they're killing partly because they've got great knowledge, but also because the bar is lower than it was 15 years ago, which is great. It's competition. It's capitalism. It isn't kumbaya, let's improve marketing because it's a not-for-profit discipline. Fuck that. It's eat your own. You know what I mean? Let's kill. And the great news is the weak are all over the place and the strong can kill.
I can get that sometimes that, so you're a marketer, so you like to fool people. And I like that question, actually, because I always turn it around. So you're the ones being fooled, I always say.
Yeah.
And then it always gets shockingly quiet.
Yeah, no, well, that's a great answer because people say, marketing's about making people, you make people want things they don't need. And you say to the person saying it, so does marketing make you want things you don't need? They go, no, not me. And I go, well,
not me, exactly.
Yeah. So marketing fundamentally has some flaws. Materialism being one of them. But fundamentally, if you understand marketing, it's about finding out what people want and giving it to them. Now, there are problems with that. I acknowledge that, but it's certainly not about just people aren't that stupid that you can make them want shit and buy shit they don't want. That's not a very good way to make money. It turns out the best way to make money, and there's a lot of, again, research on this, find out what people want and give it to them.
I like that. So let's say obviously there are not a lot of people that have Louis Vuitton or Nike or whatever, but I have a smaller company. I'm the CEO or the marketing director. Where do I start, would you say?
Look, you start with breaking down your marketing efforts into 3 phases. You realize that you have to do first a diagnosis of the market because most companies don't know the market at all. Then you've got to do a decent bit of strategy, and then you've got to produce tactics which will deliver the strategy. And so for diagnosis, you've got to go out and do research of some form or other and understand the market and segment it. For strategy, you've got to then make the targeting decisions of where you will and won't play. Make the positioning decisions of what you will and won't stand for and the objectives that you need to drive the business. And then with that strategy in mind, you go off and make the tactical decisions. And that system isn't my system. It's the system of marketing we've been basically building for 100 years, and it's pretty much foolproof. It doesn't always make you loads of money, but it very rarely goes wrong if you follow the steps properly and ignore people like Gary Vee.
In the diagnosis, is there something that is more important than other things? And especially if you have a smaller budget, what would you do?
Look, for smaller brands, the focus moves to qualitative research, and it moves specifically to ethnography, which is still the greatest form of research in my point of view. And ethnography is a big word for a very simple thing, which is get your ass into the market, shut up, and watch and learn and listen to customers as they buy and consume and move around. The first law of marketing isn't how do I persuade you to buy me. It's to put all that shit down and just go and spend time with the customers you intend to sell to and learn about them and understand them. And ethnography doesn't cost money. It just takes time. And also the ability to listen and not to jump in with solutions. I think that's fundamental, And again, if you look at Mr. Arnault, we talked about it earlier, his most important source of insight doesn't come from the CEOs. It comes from hanging out in department stores, talking to regular men and women and shop assistants to get the truth of the market. And this is market orientation. What it tells you is, most marketers don't get this, and it's fundamental. The concept of market orientation means that how you see the world as a marketer is fundamentally totally fucking wrong. Literally wrong, right? I'll give you a good example, right? Marketers keep talking about competitors. It's the wrong word. You don't have competitors if you're market oriented. If you're market oriented, your consumer has alternatives. They're not competitors. If you do the swivel from looking at it from the company point of view and you go to the customer point of view, customers don't talk about competitors. They have alternatives.
I love that. That's good.
Customers don't talk about categories. Bullshit, right? They talk about the different brands that, noodles compete with soup, competes with ice cream, because when you swivel things around, the soup category doesn't exist, right? And so the starting point for marketing is to realize that everything you think and know is not just wrong, it's dangerous. And you should wipe that and then do the swivel and listen. And that's where it begins.
Wow. That's a good one, Mark. I love that.
Well, that's market orientation, right? It's at the core of our discipline. It's been taught for since Nava and Slater and before that, the Morton scale. It's been taught for 35 years. We've conceptualized it, but no one knows about it because everyone's listening to Gary Vee talking about how to use Twitter to fucking sell trombones. We have this great literature, but it's, the people that are the smartest out there, the great scholars and thinkers, have been drowned out by the buffoons. And, there you go. There you go.
And we go to the second step, strategy there. What's the most important thing there, would you say?
Well, there's three. So again, I really hate the term strategist. I think that means wanker.
I don't like that either, so I agree.
It's people that are full of shit, right? Je suis un stratégiste, right? I don't remember there being strategists 10 or 15 years ago, right? So I think the term strategist is fundamentally full of rubbish.
Experts the same, I would say.
Yeah, experts the same, gurus the same, thought leader. Anyone who calls themselves a thought leader is a fucking idiot, right? Anyone who calls themselves a guru, right, or influencer is fundamentally a complete idiot. I think, but in the case of strategy...
I love it how you just say things as they are. It's very non-Swedish. So
Yeah. You can see how I went down in Stockholm, right? Like a lead fucking balloon, right? But it's true. Anyone that someone put Savant on their profile yesterday, right? Anyone that puts any of that on there, geez, gone.
I have the worst one, okay? The worst one is futurist.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad. There's lots of bad ones. I'm lucky. I have 30,000 contacts on LinkedIn, right? So I occasionally do a cull. So I'll kill people that are just pointless on my connections, and I'll let a few people in. And it's dead easy because anyone with these titles, I'm just not going to go anywhere near, right? It's like, remember in Seinfeld, Elaine Bennis, his mate, used to have only a certain number of contraceptive sponges left. And she'd always work out whether a man was sponge-worthy or not because she only had a certain number of sponges left. And I'm the same as Elaine Bennis. It's like I look at these contacts, I'm like, are you sponge-worthy or not? Anyway, so for strategy, there's three questions. And again, these strategists and these consulting companies make it all like fucking hocus-pocus, complicated, up your jacksie, you got to do this and you got to do that. It's all fucking rubbish. Strategy is just three things in marketing. You have to work out who you're targeting, you have to work out your position, and you have to work out your objectives. And if you can do that, you've got a strategy. It doesn't even have to be perfect, but you need clarity on that before you head into tactics.
And let's go to tactics there. What would you say? It's more execution, or?
Yeah, look, I still like McCarthy's 4 Ps. One of the battles I've been fighting against, again, an army of idiots is... it's a great example of how stupid marketers are, right? So Joe McCarthy came up with the 4 Ps 60 years ago, right? He's a wonderful professor, unfortunately now long dead. And Joe McCarthy worked out, and as he describes it, right? So he was looking at the tactical executions. The 4 Ps aren't strategy. They're just about the tactical execution. And he worked out that, well, he had product, obviously. You have to have the product as one of the, the execution elements. And then he had price. And then he had promotion, which back then was the word for that. And just by chance, they all started with P. And he openly accepted in his correspondence that place was the wrong word. It should have been distribution. So he kind of cheated on the third one. But the odds of three of them starting with P, obviously the first P can start with any letter. It's 26 to 1 that the next one will start with P. And then it's 26 squared that the third one will start with P. And the fourth one was a fudge. So you've got to do 26 squared, which would be, your math might be better than mine. What's 26 squared? It's about 700, right? It's about 700. So it's 700 to 1 that the four Ps all began with P.
Yeah.
For the last 10 years, Muppet after Muppet has come up with the new four Ps, right? Yeah. No. It's not about price and product and place. It's about personality and pop and pizzazz and right?
Personalization.
Personalization, anything. Now, here's how you know they're all idiots, right? The odds of the new four Ps in marketing, all beginning with P, are 500,000 to 1. You see what I mean? Why do they begin with P? Because they're fucking idiots, that's why, right? Because something's 60 years old doesn't mean it needs to be updated. It means it's probably fit for purpose, and it is fit for purpose. So I use the four Ps. Still, obviously what place meant in 1960 for McCarthy is different from what it means today. But those general four precepts and the idea that we would take strategy and then pull these four levers in order to execute remains very, very tight for me. The interesting challenge is most marketers are obsessed with the promotional P. So if you go to a marketing conference, it's all about advertising and all about comms. If you actually understand marketing properly, right, it's three things: diagnosis, strategy, tactics. And of the tactics, there are four Ps. One of the Ps is comms, right? So that means, and they're all about equally important. So tactics are about a third of the discipline, and then they're about a quarter of a third. So about 8%, right? Comms is about 8% of marketing. Digital comms is about half of all comms. So about 4%. We spend our lives talking about this. It's 4 or 8% of our discipline. Why don't we talk more about pricing? Why don't we talk more about product development, about strategy? And so, yeah, the big challenge is getting people not to focus on tactics until the other pieces of marketing have been done.
What I find companies today, it's I mean, not many people are, long in the game or patient of brand building. They want things now and they want things to happen. And I don't know if that's the era of social media, to what can I do with Facebook, or what can I do with this, or what. That's the toughest part of being a marketer today.
Yeah, no, the short-termism, it's partly a function of digital. I think it's partly also a function of ROI and the need to see instant returns, which is not how marketing works. If you could put a very arbitrary number on it, you probably need 3 to 4 to 10 years to be successful with a campaign overall, with a strategy, right? And if you can't maintain, one of the first things I learned from good leaders, again, there's another topic, right? Every arsehole talking about leadership is emotion and empathy, and no, it's fucking not. Leadership is making the best decision and getting everyone to follow you, right? It's got fuck all I know a lot of leaders, right? I'm not a leader myself, but I've worked for a lot of great leaders. Empathy, my ass. Most of them were the most unempathetic motherfuckers I ever met in my life, right? What they were massive egotists that made a call and then got everyone using whatever method that was at their disposal to do what they wanted them to do, right? And I think that comes back to this idea that, leadership is somehow about, again, that shit that you see on Twitter, right? The difference between a leader and a boss, a boss tells you what to do, but a leader wants you to be successful. It's bollocks, right? When COVID came along, it's fast. All these brands with these fucking emotive leaders just lost. You know what I mean? There were about 8 brands that knew what they were doing, went, right, let's change, let's make some calls, let's get on with it. Everyone else was like, oh, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. It's like, that's not leadership, man. That's just being a fucking... that's just being soft and lovely, but not necessarily leading a brand in the right direction.
So the last question here in this part, I want to ask you, ad spend. I have to ask you that one. Let's say you have $1,000, 100,000, or 1 million. Doesn't really matter. How would you spend it on the different channels?
I'd use Field and Binet first, so I'd go my long and short. So let's say I'm in, the ratio is different, but let's do consumer goods. I'd go 60-40, 60 long, 40 short, if I can be sure I can protect the 60 for 3 or 4 years to be long. So I go 60.
And I want to add that this is a great book too, the long and short 60.
Yeah, no, it's the most important theory of our time, I think. So yeah, absolutely. Field and Binet 60-40. I'd put 60 into long-term brand building. I'd mix that between TV. Everyone thinks TV's dead. It's not dead. It's still the best tool we got, though it does have gaps. I'd fill those gaps with YouTube. I think YouTube, of all the digital video options, is the best. And it's brilliant for that sub-40 demographic. And I'd use it for brand building, not activation in this case. I'd use a lot of outdoor. I think outdoor is still a fantastic medium. And if COVID ever ends, I was always a fan of cinema for certain demos as well. In terms of my short activation, I'd probably sprinkle it between the various digital tools. The targeting capabilities of digital make it too good to be true. I continue to... LinkedIn is a passion of mine, depending on the target. My experience of LinkedIn is that you always get your short-term money back and then some, but you also can build top of funnel at the same time, which is rare. Facebook continues to be, to everyone's surprise, a brilliant ROI tool. It's very rare anyone will ever complain about the ROI they get out of Facebook, so you've got to have that in there. And you don't underestimate the impact of Salesforce and point of purchase. I'd have a bit of money in sales, in incentivizing the sales team, and then in point of purchase. So they're where I would. That's where I'd put my money mostly.
I actually read about it. You talk about Salesforce from time to then about their ads.
Oh yeah, the company Salesforce. I'm a huge fan of Salesforce. They have this one ad, right, which is the best ad I've ever seen, which is just a line chart showing their market share over the last 10 years in CRM versus everyone else. And their line's doing this and everyone else is doing that. And they've just run the same ad full page and outdoor for 10 years. And it's just brilliant. But the ability to be that simple and focused, to just keep doing that, is something I totally respect.
But they have a company which talks a lot about purpose. But
Oh, look, I don't think there's a company that doesn't talk about purpose at the moment for the simple reason that they have to, right? You have to posture.
Why is that, would you say? Is it...
Oh, there's a couple of reasons. It's the political ideology right now that you have to have a purpose or there's something wrong with you. I think 5% of companies have a true purpose and the rest are just pretending. I think as well, you have to understand at the end of the day, Arash, that CMOs are all making $1 million a year or more, right? I make more than $1 million a year too. So I'm not quite as rich as CMOs, but I'm getting there, right? And when you get to earn more than $1 million a year and don't have a mortgage anymore, you start to think about legacy and all that horse shit, right? And well, there has to be more to it than money and products.
It's basically Maslow, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's a bit of Maslow, but don't go to Maslow though, because Maslow's even worse, right? Even Maslow wasn't convinced about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's a different story. But yeah, I think it's the dreams and aspirations of millionaires who want to have a legacy. And working men and women don't have those feelings. They just want products. I mean, Bob Hoffman, who's great. Bob Hoffman talks about opening your refrigerator and looking at all the brands in there and how many of them did you buy because of their purpose or even your respect for the company. And he's completely right. Never in the world of marketing have we been so completely enslaved by total bullshit, right? I lost the moment where making a good product and satisfying customers and building great brands wasn't enough for companies, right? And it wasn't enough for marketers. It doesn't mean we have to damage the planet. It doesn't mean we have to treat people with disrespect or animals badly. We should always do all these things well. We should always have, respect for all these things. But on top of that, there's nothing wrong with making a profit from a well-made product that respects all of the above and satisfies customer needs. There's no greater achievement, in my opinion, and that's why I work in marketing. And I think a lot of it is marketers who are embarrassed to sell things. They want to do something more important than sell caffeinated beverages, which is a shame, in my opinion.
Do you know anything about more new Swedish brands globally, like Klarna and stuff? And do you have Klarna in Australia?
We don't. What does Klarna do?
They do payments online.
Yeah, look, Swedes will hate this next bit. I have a fundamental theory of Swedish businesses, which is that the first thing a Swedish entrepreneur does is he or she gets the right chairs and tables in that makes their office look great. They're superficially driven by shit that they shouldn't be worried about, right? And I think the downfall of many Swedish tech companies is they're more worried about the optics than the fundamental business itself. So I hope Klarna, the Swedes are very smart people, don't get me wrong, but there's that, you know what it's like? There's that thing with them where they love the little shit, you know what I mean? They can't resist it, that I hope doesn't get in the way.
And the fixation of digital first. I want to hear a little bit more about that. Why is that?
The Swedes I don't know why the Swedes went for it so hard. They certainly did to their cost, I think. The concept of digital first is the dumbest thing in business, right? For a couple of reasons. Digital first is all about putting tactics before strategy. I don't know whether you want to be digital first. I think you should get your strategy worked out first. And you can't have a digital strategy, right? The idea is an oxymoron, right? Strategy. It's been the same for about fucking 4,000 years, right? Who, what, and how, whether it's digital or not, digital is a tactical thing, right? You need a strategy, right? Irrespective of what business you're in. The bigger problem with digital first is, and I'll do it with you, Rash, come on. I get the digital tools. Okay, it's Facebook, it's Instagram. I get that. Give me an example of a non-digital advertising medium. Which one springs to mind? What's the most, what's a non-digital medium for you?
It's really hard to answer that one because you obviously think about, I do TV, but that's digital today, isn't it?
Totally. And so's news media, and so's outdoor, and so's radio, and so's everything else. And, Nicholas Negroponte 20 years ago said that digital will become so common that like air and drinking water, we'll only notice it when it's not there. Digital first means fucking nothing, right? It means nothing. And anyone that goes banging on about digital first fundamentally doesn't get it, right? There are no such thing as digital tools or traditional tools. There's just tools. And anyone that doesn't get that message is a moron, in my opinion.
Is it like evolution, maybe? Before we said IT to everything.
Yeah.
Today we say digital, and tomorrow, I don't know, it's just the world.
No, digital has changed things dramatically, you're right, but it's already happened to the point where it's legion, So yeah, and why the Swedes have become obsessed with it, I think it's that inherent love of the shiny and new that they just can't resist it. You know what I mean? They just can't stay away from it.
I always talk about, I don't know what you take of this, but what is the constant in this world? And with constant, I mean people's psychology and how we behave and stuff like that. And what is the variable? What does change? Platforms change and stuff like that. And the more I study marketing, it's more like nothing has really changed in the techniques of marketing, but platforms change.
Yeah. No, tactics change, right? You're right. The model of marketing is the same. Strategy is the same. Consumers are always different because the market is different, is always moving. Tactics evolve. So there's these three timelines where the customer market is, completely different month to month. Strategy is never changing, and tactics are always evolving. But yeah, I despair of marketers that don't think they can learn from case studies in the 70s or 80s. I think there's a ton we can learn from our own history, but marketers, refuse to learn from it. It's really sad.
Is there any trends right now in marketing that are good to pay attention to?
I'm really interested in how the long and the short will translate to global businesses. So there's an interesting, in any global company, there's this constant matrix tension between the global marketing team in Stockholm and then the country teams in Uruguay and in Ireland, banging. They hate each other, and there's constant tension. And I think the long and the short might be an interesting new approach to that, in the sense that the 60% or 50% spent on brand, top of funnel, mass marketing, that can be done by the global team. And then in each country, the shorter activation targeted stuff can be handled by each country. And that's an interesting idea I want to explore more. That's the one that I'm probably most interested in at the moment. And the other one is two-speed targeting, the idea that, we've had this big debate. Do you go after mass marketing or do you go after targeting? And I think the answer is very clearly you do both. And that for the long brand building, you do want to target everyone in the category. But for short activations, you want to go after particular target segments. And I like that idea that there's two speeds going on. I think it's very interesting.
Your thoughts on share of search?
I'm interested in it. I mean, my interest is, I think it's a really good proxy measure for salience. How does a marketer know? What do we know about salience? We know that coming to mind is super important. We know that it fades relatively quickly. We know it's really hard to measure. So my interest in share of search would be that it might be a really accessible, free, daily variable, which gives us a sense of whether we're becoming more or less salient versus our competitors. And that does appear to be the case, at least in terms of how it's predicting shifts in sales. Les Binet's work is very, very strong on this. It does appear to have this perfect lag. So I think, the idea that we would use the share of search as an ongoing proxy variable for coming to mind is a really interesting one. I think it could be very, very useful.
I'm going to try to wrap up, and I always have the same questions. And the first one is that not everyone can sit and talk with Mark for an hour like this, and I'm really thankful for that. But everyone can read a book that has influenced Mark's thinking. And if you would point to a book or two that has really meant a lot for your thinking.
I'd say if you want a technical book, Richard Rummel's Good Strategy, Bad Strategy is a great book. But I think they're all pretty fucking boring, Arash. About a year ago, everyone got onto Twitter and they're like, these are my 5 recommended marketing books, and everyone was taking a photo of their books, and it was like, fuck off. It's so boring. I'd say The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway is the great book to learn how to write.
Such a great book too.
And the book has not a single additional word superfluous word within it. So I'd say that, you can read strategy books if you want. Jesus, life's too short. I'd read The Old Man and the Sea, Hemingway. I think that's probably the great thing to read. It's got nothing to do with marketing. Who fucking cares about marketing? It's just a great book,
What did you learn of it, would you say?
I learned that in writing, it was the start of learning that you definitely learn to kill your babies, in the sense that less words are always more powerful than more words. And the skill is not to write more, it's to write less. If people, the physicist Feynman used to always talk about this. You have to be really intelligent to communicate an idea simply, right? If you're not that smart, you're going to use lots of big words and complex ideas, because you're hiding the fact you're not really on top of it. If you look at Hemingway and The Old Man and the Sea, this is it's designed to be a simple story, a simple fable, but it's him at the height of his powers. Only a great artist could write like that so tightly you can't find a word that you could strike from that whole book, short as it is, And so I'd say that's, it's the idea of keeping it tight, which does apply to marketing and brand management.
It's funny because we talked about that this morning, me and my wife, at the breakfast table. That
keeping
writing
it short.
is not, that writing is not about what you write, but what you can delete in the writing.
No,
that's the essence.
That's absolutely the key point, Arash. I mean, if you look at the best definition of strategy from several different people, Strategy is deciding what you're not going to do. And if you look at any decent career path, it's the decisions where you said, I'm not going to do that because I choose not to do that are far more important than what you chose to do. So the old man in the sea isn't, brilliant because of the words that he uses. It's brilliant because of the words that he did not use. That's the point.
And on point of that, why I've searched for it. You don't have any book.
No one reads fucking books, right? No one reads books. So
is that why you haven't written one?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
It would be
If I wanted to have an intellectual masturbation, sure, writing a book and having a beautiful book, and I've got this book, and look at me, here's my fucking book. Sure, if I wanted to jerk myself off intellectually, it makes perfect sense. But if I look at it from the point of view of how do you have impact and influence and connection with marketers, it's about number 800 on my list, right? I mean, I like making little videos. My Mini MBA reaches 10,000 marketers a year. My column reaches 600,000 marketers a year. I don't think, books seem to me like it's a lot of work, and I don't think there's a lot of people really reading these books. I mean, maybe would I do it? I just think it's such a wank fest. I would never do it. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of really bad marketing people. I'll leave them to write books, right? They can do that.
And 10 years from now, what would you say Mark will tell Mark right now?
Look, hopefully that he's packed it in the sense that, I put off a lot of things to work really hard earlier in my life. And I don't want to be going past 60 I don't want to be Phil Kotler. I have enormous respect for the big men and women of marketing, but anyone that's working past 60 that doesn't need the money, I think they're missing the point. Again, marketing's wonderful and important, but there's far more important things to do with one's life than just marketing. Do you know what I mean? Like I need to do other things, So yeah, I'm hoping that I'll be 60. I'm 50 now, right? I'll be 60 in 10 years time. I really, really don't want to be. I'd like to get Mini MBA. In the next 10 years are really important for Mini MBA. I'd like it to become the main source of learning in marketing globally. I doubt that will happen, but I'll have a good go. I think it's better than anything else in terms of training marketers. So I'm going to try and get it to be the standard. I'd like to do that, and then I'm going to stop. And I really like to get drunk. And I want to make a fine distinction between drinking really good wine and getting drunk. I like to get really pleasantly shit-faced, ideally also with really good wine. But the good wine is kind of option B. I just like having a real good drink with entertaining people. So I'd really like to have and I don't have time to do that at the moment, partly because of COVID, but also because of work. So I'd really like to know I have time, not every night, but like once a week, to get fucked up with some really entertaining people and drink a shed load of booze. And I'm aware that that's not a trendy thing to say, and I don't care. I like, a decent, and I'm talking 4 or 5 bottles of red wine and 2 or 3 people. That's my idea of a party. Do you know what I mean? That's what I want to do. And just talk shit. You can't smoke cigarettes because it kills you, and probably red wine does too. But I reckon 2 or 3 decent bottles of red, 4 or 5. I'd like to do a lot more of that because I think that's missing in my life at the moment. And yeah, I'd like to do a lot more of that, Rash. That's where I'm focused at the moment.
And if you would summarize, people have listened now for an hour. What is the most important thing to take with you from this conversation?
I would say, I think, marketing has its place. It's an important subject, but there's more to life than marketing. Do you know what I mean? I think, we've got to get it in perspective. But within the marketing discipline, I would say keeping it simple and keeping it realistic and centered on the customer remains the prime directive of marketing.
And Mini MBA, it's on my bucket list. It's on there to do it. How do you go? Where do you check that out?
So we'd love to have you, first of all, Arash, or any of your listeners. We run it twice a year. So there's the Mini MBA in marketing and the Mini MBA in brand management. They're different courses. They're based on the courses that I've taught on the MBA programs at London Business School, MIT, and the University of Melbourne, all prize-winning courses in the MBA world. And so after 25 years, I've turned them into online courses. We run them every year in both April and September, 100% online. And you can do it while you're working and everything else. And our Net Promoter Score is plus 78. Most of the marketers that do the course will tell you that it's not just the best online course, but the best course they've ever taken. And we're doing something special with it that, we're training marketers in a brilliant way. And I'm so proud of the marketers that we've recruited, but we want more. And it's very practical. It's designed for marketers. It's not the usual boring course. And if anyone wants to do it, you've just got to Google Mini MBA marketing. There's about 25 courses that have copied our Mini MBA in marketing, but you will find us down the middle there somewhere, and we'd love to have you.
So check out Mini MBA. Google it simply, and you will get it. And I'm it's on my bucket list, Mark. I will do it.
Arash, we'd love to have you, mate. And you'd love it. I mean, it's just 12 weeks, right? But all the readings and the interactions in the class, and then the exam, which everybody loves. In the brand management course, we set a simulation and you run a brand for 5 years, and your grade is your share price at the end. And in the marketing course, you build a marketing plan, and your grade is the quality of the marketing plan strategy. So it's very practical, but it's as close to real as we can make it. You'd love it. We'd love to have you.
And I'd love to have you here on the podcast, Mark. It was really non-lagom, as we would say. Thank you.
My pleasure, Arash. Real pleasure. Stay. I hope you get a good summer there. You need a decent summer this year in Australia. Sometimes it doesn't happen there, right? But I hope you get a decent, proper Swedish summer, because it would help.
We have 7 degrees now, so that's
tricky.
Ja, det var kanske den mest osvenska gäst jag har haft med i den här podden, och fan mig själv småfnissa lite av hans brutala ärlighet. Men som vanligt så tar jag med mig några reflektioner, och här är mina punkter. 1. Vikten för vd att äga varumärket. En grej jag verkligen tog med mig är hur viktigt det är för vd eller bolagets ledning att äga visionen och känslan för varumärket. Det kan och bör i min mening inte delegeras. Kampanjer, annonsering med mera, det taktiska kan delegeras, men vad man vill strategiskt med varumärket bör inte göra det. För då kan det bli lite vad som helst. Så slutar den personen på marknad, och så kommer en ny som vill göra något annat, och till slut så blir det så rörigt så ingen har koll på vad. Men det måste alltså finnas en röd tråd och helt enkelt vad man vill på sikt med sitt varumärke. Nummer 2. Back to basics. Jag älskar hur han gör marknadsföring till något så enkelt och icke-klyschigt på något sätt, där han tar bort allt med diverse digitala termer som ingen kan förstå. För i sin essens handlar det om att bygga varumärke som folk vill handla av och associeras med. Mycket är teknikalitet, men i sin renaste form som jag har skrivit och pratat om ett bra tag har marknadsföring egentligen inte ändrats på nästan 100 år. Nummer 3. Våga vara osvensk. Mark är extremt okonventionell. Ett bredare vokabulär av svordomar än de flesta, men har lyckats ändå upplevas som professionell. Den här är paradox där på något sätt. Mark är det original vi ofta saknar i landet lagom. Någon som sticker ut hakan och pekar med hela handen. Han äts inte för han tycker och vågar ha fel. Han är ju mer jag tänker på det, sitt eget varumärke, och byggt en image av sig själv som en okonventionell professor som får mig att reflektera. Vad är din image? På vilket sätt bygger du ditt egna personliga varumärke? Hur känner man egentligen igen dig? Relevanta frågor för dig personligen, organisationen som du företräder. Ja, det var några av dagens reflektioner, och hoppas att ni fick med er något och att ni uppskattar podden. Gör ni det? Glöm ej att följa oss och följ podden och ge oss jättegärna en recension så blir vi superglada. Påminner som vanligt om mitt nyhetsbrev. Det är en omvärldsbevakning av allt det man behöver veta som ledare varje månad som du får direkt i din inkorg. Så glöm inte att signa upp för det. Stort tack till Josefin som ser till att denna poddens finns och Lukas som klipper den. Tack till dig kära lyssnare att du har lyssnat på VD-podden. Med mig Araskilan så hörs vi snart igen för ett nytt avsnitt och nya lärdomar.
Den här podden produceras av Viva Media, en av Nordens ledande byråer inom marknadsföring med fokus på helheten.